Welcome to week 9 of Stories. Focus is the topic that I've selected for today. I hope you're all enjoying the stories and getting a lot out of them. Today will be the same. Stories given by the original speakers. Enjoy.
I'll never forget one high school football game against a rival school. I played the wingback position, and my assignment was to either block the linebacker or to try to get open so the quarterback could throw the ball to me. The reason I remember this particular game so well is because the fellow on the other side of the line, the man I was supposed to block, was a giant. I wasn't exactly the tallest athlete in the world, but I think this other guy may have been. I remember looking up at him, thinking he probably weighed as much as two of me. Keep in mind, when I played, we didn't have the protective gear that players have today. My helmet was made of leather, and it didn't have a face guard. The more I thought about it, the more I came to a sobering realization that if I ever let him catch me, I could be cheering for my team the rest of the season from a hospital bed. Lucky for me, I was fast, and for the better part of the first half, I managed to avoid him, except for one play. Our quarterback dropped back to pass. I was open. He threw the ball and it sailed towards me. The only problem was that I could hear a lumbering gallop behind me. In a moment of clarity, I thought that if I caught the ball, there was a distinct possibility I could be eating meals through a tube. But the ball was heading for me, and my team was depending on me. So I reached out, and at the last instant I looked up, and there he was. I remember the ball hitting my hand. I remember struggling to hang on to it. I remember the sound of the ball falling to the turf. After that, I'm not exactly sure what happened because the giant hit me so hard, I wasn't sure what planet I was on. One thing I did remember was a deep voice coming from behind a dark haze. Serves you right for being on the wrong team. McKinley Oswald was my high school football coach. He was a great coach and had a profound influence on my life, but I think he could have learned his method of motivating players from an Army drill sergeant. That day, during his halftime speech, Coach Oswald reminded the whole team about the pass I had dropped. Then he pointed right at me and said, "How could you do that?" He wasn't speaking with an inside voice. I want to know exactly what made you drop that pass. I stammered for a moment and then finally decided to tell the truth. I took my eye off the ball, I said. The coach looked at me and said, "That's right, you took your eye off the ball. Don't ever do that again. That kind of mistake loses ball games." I respected Coach Oswald. In spite of how terrible I felt, I made up my mind to do what the coach had said. I vowed to never take my eye off the ball again, even if it meant getting pounded to Mongolia by the giant on the other side of the line. We headed back into the field and started the second half. It was a close game, and even though my team had played well, we were behind 4 points late in the fourth quarter. The quarterback called my number on the next play. I went out again, and again I was open. The ball headed towards me. But this time the giant was in front of me and in perfect position to intercept the pass. He reached up, but the ball sailed through his hands. I jumped high, never taking my eye off the ball, stabbed at it, and pulled it down for the game-winning touchdown. I don't remember much about the celebration after, but I do remember the look on Coach Oswald's face. "Way to keep your eye on the ball," he said. I think I smiled for a week. I have known many great men and women. Although they have different backgrounds, talents, and perspectives, they all have this in common. They work diligently and persistently towards achieving their goals. It's easy to get distracted and lose focus on the things that are most important in life. I've tried to remember the lessons I learned from Coach Oswald and prioritize values that are important to me so that I can keep my eye focused on things that really matter.
In the premortal existence, ours was not a selective obedience. We did not pick and choose which part of the eternal plan we were going to follow. I learned that lesson on our first night flying solo in pilot training, when all of us were given the instruction, don't fly acrobatic patterns at night. You are beginning pilots without instrument flight training. Sometime later, an otherwise good pilot and a great friend chose to disobey that commandment. As he flew loops and barrel rolls through the night sky over Texas, he looked through the cockpit canopy and thought he saw the stars above him, but he was really seeing the lights of the oil rigs below. He was experiencing vertigo. The G-forces on his plane made it seem like he was right side up, yet he was upside down. As he pulled on the stick to climb higher into the night sky, he dove towards the earth and crashed into the twinkling lights of the oil field below. When flying an airplane, if you change your position by just 1 degree at a time, your inner ear cannot detect the change. Brethren, young and old, when we practice selective obedience, we change our position relative to the Lord, and usually by only 1 degree at a time. As the deceptive forces of the adversary work on us, we cannot detect them, and we experience spiritual vertigo.
A second trap into which we can fall is the naivete that grows out of our not realizing that the adversary will press, particularly in the areas of our vulnerabilities. It ought not to surprise us that this will be so. The things we would most like to avoid, therefore, will most often be the things that confront us most directly and most sharply. Some of you may recall that the British military planners who built the fortress of Singapore, which was supposed to be invincible, fixed the guns of Singapore so that they would fire seaward. The Japanese very cleverly came from behind by land. Churchill and others were stunned that this citadel and this fortress had fallen so quietly and so simply. Some of us have guns that fire only in one direction. We are vulnerable, and the vulnerabilities will be probed by the vicissitudes of life. One of the great advantages of life in the church and life in which gospel is at the center is that we can overcome these vulnerabilities. Otherwise, we shall be taken by surprise, and swiftly.
May I share with you some words of wisdom that were found on the wall of an orphanage in Calcutta, India. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you've got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it is between you and your God anyway. Sisters, it is always between us and the Lord. As President James E. Faust said, quote, "What is the greatest need in the world? Is not the greatest need in all of the world for every person to have a personal, ongoing, daily, continuing relationship with the Savior? Having such a relationship can unchain the divinity within us, and nothing can make a greater difference in our lives as we come to know and understand our divine relationship with God."
We cannot and we must not lose focus on the things that matter most.